All right, let's dive deep into Amazon, shall we? Beyond that buy now button, see what they've been up to this past year. We've got their 2023 and 2024 10Ks, plus some really insightful analysis to help us make sense of it all.
Yeah, definitely.
The big question is, can they stay on top? Costs are rising, competition's getting fierce, right?
Exactly. That's the key. I think to get to the bottom of that, we have to go beyond just the revenue, how much money they're bringing in. We've got to look at how they're making it and spending it. Where's it all going?
Okay, so let's break it down, right? I mean, everyone knows Amazon's huge GE, right? Are everywhere. E-commerce, the cloud, groceries, entertainment, you name it.
True, but think about it. When let's say you're shopping on Amazon, you're actually interacting with all these different pieces of their business, all these segments. It's quite a web.
So let's untangle that web a bit, right?
Yeah.
You got the classic e-commerce, which is still like their bread and butter, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's their foundation. And that includes, of course, their own sales, plus all those third-party sellers, and, of course, the Prime memberships, love them or hate them, right?
Right. And then there's AWS, Amazon Web Services, like the silent powerhouse, right?
Yeah.
Powering a huge chunk of the internet.
And what's fascinating about AWS is it's a whole different ballgame compared to the e-commerce side. Their pricing, the sheer scale of their infrastructure, how early they were in the cloud market, it all adds up to much higher profit margins.
Yeah, it's like they're playing in a different league.
Yeah.
And then you've got the subscription services like Amazon Music, Kindle Unlimited, all that. It's like loyalty programs on steroids, right?
Exactly. They lock in customers, and those are recurring revenue streams. And let's not forget the advertising business. They're quietly becoming a major force there as well.
It's amazing how much they've grown beyond that original online bookstore. But even with all this, they're facing some pretty strong headwinds, right?
For sure. Competition is really heating up. You've got Microsoft, Google, Walmart, Alibaba, all vying for a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
And then there's those rising costs everyone's talking about, especially in the whole fulfillment and logistics area.
Which brings us to their financials, right? Q1 2024 alone, they brought in over $130 billion in revenue. That's just mind-blowing. Think about that, all of us. Every purchase, every click adding up to that number.
Yeah, it's pretty staggering.
But when you look at their operating income, the picture's not quite as rosy, is it?
No, it's not. Those rising costs, they're definitely impacting their bottom line. Their gross margin is down to 42 cents for every dollar in sales, so that leaves less to cover all the other costs and actually generate profit.
So how are they dealing with these challenges? Are they just kind of riding it out?
No, not at all. They're very proactive. They've got a multi-pronged approach. It's all lead out in their management discussion and analysis. They're laser focused on customer engagement, keeping people coming back, expanding AWS, obviously, and tapping into those new markets, especially in developing economies where online shopping is really booming.
It's like a game of chess. They're always thinking several moves ahead. But what about those immediate cost pressures? Are they just accepting those as the cost of doing business?
No way. They're exploring all sorts of options. Automation in the fulfillment centers, expanding their electric vehicle fleet for deliveries, renegotiating supplier contracts to get better deals. They're not just sitting back.
So they're pulling out all the stops, really. It's interesting, though, because even with all the cost cutting, they're still investing heavily back into the business, aren't they?
Yes, their free cash flow, which is the cash they have left over after all the operating expenses and investments, it's not as strong as you might expect. They're reinvesting a huge chunk of it, billions, back into those growth areas like AWS, logistics, and, of course, AI. They're betting on the future rather than just pocketing the profits today.
So taking some risks, but they're also in a very strong position, right? Solid balance sheet, tons of assets, and they're really good at managing their cash, right?
That's a crucial point. Even with all the pressure and investments, they have $3.5 billion in cash on hand. That gives them a lot of room to maneuver to weather any storms that come their way.
Okay, so we've got this picture of Amazon, this giant machine with all these different parts facing competition, rising costs, a global economy that's constantly changing. But they're also incredibly adaptable, innovative. They seem to turn challenges into opportunities, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're so fascinating to watch. They're not just reacting to the market, they're shaping it. And to really understand how they're doing that, I think we need to take a closer look at some of their specific strategic initiatives.
We've talked about Amazon as this massive, complex company, but let's zoom in a bit, look at some of their specific moves, acquisitions, things like that.
Right.
I was going through their 8K filings, and they've definitely been busy not just sitting around.
Oh, yeah. Those filings, they really give you a glimpse into what they're thinking, their strategy. Like, remember we talked about that change in leadership?
Right.
That May 24th, 2023 filing, new CFO, that's not just a routine thing.
Yeah.
It signals a change in direction, fresh perspective, especially as they navigate these markets and double down on AI and cloud tech.
It's like bringing in a new coach, right?
Yeah.
To take the team to that next level. What about acquisitions? Have they been buying up any interesting companies?
Well, there was that one on November 1st, 2023. They scooped up a cloud technology firm. The 8K spells it out. And this wasn't just adding another company to the portfolio.
Right.
This was strategic, bolstering AWS, attracting even more of those big enterprise customers.
Yeah. It's like they're building an empire within an empire. With AWS, it's incredible. So new leadership, a key acquisition, any other notable moves they've been making?
Their filings also show a big push towards sustainability. They're investing heavily in renewable energy to power those massive data centers, expanding their electric vehicle fleet for deliveries, even changing their packaging practices.
Yeah.
This is not just PR, it's a smart business move. Consumers care about this stuff. They want sustainable products and services. Amazon is positioning itself as a leader here.
Makes sense. They're not just trying to be the biggest. They want to be the biggest A&D, the greenest, right?
Yeah.
Ambitious.
Ambitious, for sure. But it also fits perfectly with their whole mission, right? Earth's most customer-centric company. It's not just about profits. It's about the long-term impact, on the planet, society, all of that.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about their financials. A lot of listeners are probably wondering about those profit margins. Everyone knows they're huge, but how profitable are they really?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. We touched on this earlier, but in Q2 2024, their gross margin was 42%. So for every $100 in sales, they kept $42 to cover all those operating costs and ideally generate some profit. Now, this is actually down a bit from 45% in Q2 2023.
So margins are shrinking. Should we be worried?
It's definitely something to watch. But remember all those rising costs? Those are hitting every industry, not just Amazon.
Right. But you mentioned earlier that AWS is kind of their golden goose, right?
Exactly. AWS consistently has much higher operating margins than their other businesses. That's one of the reasons they're so focused on growing it. It's a real cash cow.
So we've talked about margins. What about their cash flow? How effectively are they generating and managing their cash?
Well, as of Q2 2024, they had a pretty healthy $3.5 billion in cash and cash equivalents on hand. That's a good sign, shows they're managing their cash well. They're also generating positive free cash flow, the cash left over after all the operating expenses and investments are paid.
Okay, so they're making money, A&D, managing it well. That sounds like a good combo.
It is, but their free cash flow growth isn't as strong as it could be, and there's a reason for that. Remember their aggressive reinvestment strategy. They're plowing billions back into those growth areas we talked about. AWS, logistics, AI. It's a classic example of prioritizing long-term growth over short-term profits. It's a gamble, but it could pay off big time.
A gamble, huh? Reminds me of those risks we talked about earlier. Regulation, cybersecurity threats, that whole unpredictable global landscape. How do those potential risks play into their financial outlook?
They definitely create uncertainty, and uncertainty can spook investors, potentially impacting their stock price.
So how could these risks actually play out, like in real-world terms?
Well, for instance, regulatory changes could force them to make expensive adjustments, really eating into those profits. A major cybersecurity breach could damage their reputation, lead to huge financial losses. And those global disruptions, like the supply chain issues we've seen recently, can make it much harder for them to meet demand and maintain profitability.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Trying to grow and innovate while also managing all those risks and uncertainties.
Exactly. And it's a testament to their management team that they've been able to navigate those challenges so well. But gotta remember, the future is always uncertain. No company, not even Amazon, is immune to risk.
We've talked about a lot, haven't we?
Yeah.
Amazon's businesses, their financials, their strategies. But we got to look ahead too, right, before we wrap this up. What about the future?
Yeah, absolutely. We've touched on those opportunities and risks, but it's worth really diving into them. Amazon's own 10K filings, they really paint this picture of exciting possibilities.
Yeah, they really emphasize those, the potential of AI and cloud-based services. It's a big focus for them, clearly.
It's like they're laying the groundwork for a future we can't even imagine yet, And they're not just talking about the infrastructure, they're developing these sophisticated AI and machine learning tools, giving businesses, the power to analyze data, automate stuff, even create totally new products and services. Is pretty mind-boggling.
It's like they're handing out the keys to a digital kingdom, like, here you go, build something amazing.
Exactly. And beyond that, beyond AI in the cloud, their filings also highlight the whole expansion of their digital content. Prime Video, Amazon Music, Kindle Unlimited, even gaming. They're all in.
Creating this whole entertainment ecosystem, right, to keep customers hooked.
Right. And don't forget, the international markets, there's huge potential there. E-commerce, cloud computing, they're still in their early stages in many parts of the world, especially those emerging economies. And Amazon's right there, ready to capitalize on that growth.
It's like a digital gold rush. It's incredible to watch.
It really is. But gotta be realistic, right? Every opportunity comes with risks. No company's immune to challenges, not even Amazon.
So what are those storm clouds on the horizon? What should we be watching out for?
Well, one of the biggest is regulation, for sure. They're a giant global company, constantly under the microscope, right? Data privacy, antitrust issues, labor practices, all those things are potential challenges.
Yeah, and those can have real consequences. Fines, lawsuits, reputational damage. It can all take a toll on their bottom line.
Absolutely. Another big one is cybersecurity. As they grow that cloud computing business and collect more and more data, they become a bigger target for hackers. A major data breach could be disastrous for them and their customers.
It's a constant battle, right? In the digital world, always trying to stay one step ahead.
And then you've got those risks that are harder to predict, pandemics, supply chain problems, geopolitical stuff, even climate change. These big macro events can really shake things up. And Amazon, as big as they are, they're not immune to those ripple effects.
So it's a mix, isn't it? Opportunities and risks all intertwined. But looking at everything we've learned, do you think they're equipped to handle whatever comes next?
Well, based on their history, their strategies, I'd say they're in a pretty good spot. They're adaptable, they innovate, they've overcome challenges before. Plus, they're financially sound, they've got diverse revenue streams, and they're committed to those long-term investments. But, they're not perfect, and the future's always unpredictable. It'll be interesting to see how they evolve, how they respond to whatever comes their way.
Well said. We've covered a lot today, haven't we? Hopefully you've all learned a little more about Amazon, how they operate, their financials, their strategy, and what might lie ahead for them. It's a fascinating company, to say the least.
Absolutely. And remember, their success isn't just about technology or logistics. It's that focus on the customer, making things easier, faster, more convenient. That's powerful stuff.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive, but I want to leave you with this thought. Amazon's a company that's all about pushing boundaries, experimenting, trying new things. They're constantly challenging the status quo. So next time you use Amazon, think about that. Whether you're buying a book, streaming a show, or just grabbing some groceries, take a moment to appreciate the innovation behind it all. And think about how their quest for convenience, for efficiency, might shape our world even more in the years to come.